Here we are. It's True Faith present. Dave is straight in there with the hello. It's True Faith presents the Charlotte Show, your pre-Leicester warm up, and I need to warm up. I'm having a coffee, which firstly feels crazy because I don't have caffeine after midday, and secondly, I've just been for a walk at the beach on South Shields, so I'm still cold to my bones, but I will get there by the end of this show. We'll all be warmed up. We'll all be ready for the game. Alex is joining me today, and so is Chris, too, of our True Faith podcast. Oh, Alex is the man with the plan in charge, and Chris is a regular contributor and part of the podcast. So thank you both for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
So we are about an hour from kickoff, and as usual, the team sheet has come out. Would you like me to read it to you?
Please do.
Okay, I will. Darlow, Yedlin, Fernandez, Cher, Clark, Ritchie, Sean Longstaff, Matty Longstaff, Almiron, Joe Linton, and Wilson. Well, Alex. I guess because we don't have Hayden this today, right? Because Hayden got a 3-match ban?
No, just a 1 for 5 yellow cards.
Oh right. Well, immediate thoughts on that, Alex? On that?
I think it's as expected, Chris. With your, you got the word from the fan base with a poll on the True Faith Twitter page. Which suggested most people wanted to see Sean Longstaff start, and the people have been given what they want. But I just find it incredible. And listen, nothing would make me happier today than Joe Linton connecting to one of his overhead kick attempts and scoring a lovely goal. But I just cannot believe he's been selected again. Fine, let's get behind him. However, Joe Linton, but I just think it's so harsh on Murphy. I'm pleased Almiron's in there. Can Almiron and Joe Linton maybe link up a little bit more than Murphy and Joe Linton did, possibly? But yeah, I'm like genuinely speechless that he continues to be selected when his output is so poor. But maybe today's the day. You never know. Yeah,
but for how long can you keep saying like maybe today's the day? It's the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing at all, but it's a similar thing to that like Shelby argument. Like, well, he has good days and he has bad days, and we're just waiting for one of those good days. We're still waiting for one of those good. Shelby's been dropped. Why haven't the same applied to Joe Linton? Chris, how do you feel about that lineup?
I think the choice of double Longstaffs in the centre of the park is probably the right one. That decision that the bulk of our followers went for was the one that I would probably go for. What's the alternative? Jeff Hendrick? No thanks. I think
he's on the bench.
Yeah, that's true. So we might see him. But let's be positive. In defence, that trio in the centre, Fernandez, Cher, Clark, performed really well the other day. And on the preview podcast last night that we recorded, some might have listened. We discussed Fernandez and how important he is here, and there was a worry that given the amount of games that we've got going on at the moment, that he wouldn't be fit enough to play so quickly. So that's a real relief. I think he offers leadership as well as a lot of defensive stability, and then Cher and Clark as well is good. Glad to see Almiron starting rather than on the bench. And I guess the other positive, just sticking with the defence, is that Emil Kraft is nowhere near the starting lineup. So that's a positive.
He's still in the squad though.
He is in the squad.
Still in the squad. So for those of you who are not looking at the team sheet, our subs are, I should have those ready when I say that. Our subs, oh God, I've lost it. Kraft's in there. Murphy's in there.
I've got them here if you want.
Yes, you do that for me. I did have them on my screen. I've lost them, sorry.
I got Dubravka, Dummett, Carroll, Shelby, Gale, Hendrick, Kraft, Manquillo, which is good. We haven't seen him for a while, and Murphy.
Okay, yeah. So, Alex, how much do you think this is about resting someone like Murphy? Do you think he's going to come on as a fresh pair of legs after 60 minutes to really rejuvenate the team, or do you think that's wishful thinking?
It very much depends on the game situation, isn't it? We kind of know that if Newcastle go behind, particularly playing this formation, then it's job done. And I wonder how much that'll play into Steve Bruce's thinking, because despite statistically the games against Manchester City and Liverpool being similar, it was night and day, wasn't it, in terms of approach, trying to win the ball, trying to put some pressure on opposition. The danger with that, of course, is when you start running round like we did, because, you know, against Chelsea and Spurs, particularly this season, and Manchester United to an extent, although it was a different formation, we just kind of let the opposition do to us as they pleased. You leave gaps, and Steve Bruce will know that if we go behind today, then the game is pretty much over. So I think it'll be, I hope it's the same as Liverpool, but I fear it won't be for that reason. And in terms of, you know, Murphy is played himself into the squad and the team, hasn't he? And fair play, he's a player that I thought was nowhere near Premier League quality from what I'd seen from him so far, and from his stints at the Championship clubs, which were decent but nothing major. But you know what, Murphy, Gale on the bench, there's a couple of options there. Even Shelvey, it's interesting, isn't it, that Shelvey, from being vice captain and, you know, first name on the team sheet under Bruce, is, you know, now looking like fourth choice central midfielder, which is an incredible change of his affairs.
Yeah, I've kept this question from Paul M on screen. If you are watching on screen and not listening to the audio, what is it going to take for Joe Linton to be dropped? Kill someone. And I really like this question, because I don't know if you're saying, is it going to take him killing someone, or you're demanding that I kill someone, like someone who is attached to this deal. What is it going to take, Chris? Do you think a mandatory prison sentence is the only way that he's going to not be on our starting 11?
I think it's going to take something extraordinary or unprecedented, to use a kind of COVID term. Yeah, I mean, it beggars belief why. For me, Joelinton's still playing. Just to kind of hark back to the preview, what we talked about was moving Almiron to the left and then having Murphy on the right. I'd rather have that than Joelinton near this starting lineup. If I can try and rationalise what Bruce is thinking, to kind of echo what Alex was talking about a minute ago, one of Leicester's weaknesses is in the air, and maybe he's thinking that Joelinton might be more useful in the air than someone else. But I mean, I think we've all seen, as many as he wins in the air, he loses as well. So yeah, I'm as perplexed as you, Paul.
What do you think it'll take, Alex? What do you think it will take? Is it a murder on the pitch that we'll see Joe Linton finally not start?
I think it would literally take Joe Linton to murder Steve Bruce. So the only reason Steve Bruce is going to consider not playing him. It's you know, I think Chris is right though. I think, you know, I joked on the last 3 podcasts that we did that Joe Linton is basically in the team to compete with fullbacks for area balls, because he can't win them against centre backs, because they don't really want Wilson competing for the ball from kickoffs. Darlow consistently kicks out to Joe Linton. He's pretty much in there as kind of the Shola Amiobi playing right wing under Graham Souness role, which, fair play to Bruce, tactic didn't work in 2005. Might not work in 2020. Who knows? Well, no, it doesn't work, because we've seen him play several times and it doesn't work. But maybe it will today. And yeah, it's funny, isn't it? He must have photos of Bruce. You know, it's a tough one. But on a positive note, we've got 2 Geordies in the middle. Maybe that'll inspire Joe Linton to play well. You look back and think, you know what, 2 Geordie lads from North Shields playing for Newcastle. Today's the day. I'm just trying to think of anything positive.
I don't think Joe Linton knows where North Shields is. I don't think he cares about that.
Do you think he knows who Matty Longstaff is? Does he think he turned up against he's like, who are you?
Yeah, maybe. That's funny. Joe Linton must have photos of Bruce by now. Okay, Mark's watching. Afternoon, you buttes. Do ask questions if you're watching. Write your comments, write your questions. We love them. We're here to answer them. We're here to just chat through the game, the upcoming game. Afternoon, you buttes. Well, thank you, Mark. That is always welcome as well, that kind of commentary. We have the exact same record as last season after 15 games. 4, 5, 6, -7 goal difference, scored and conceded 2 more. Panel's thoughts on where we are at compared to last season. Well, personally, well, yeah, as you say, we're pretty much in the exact same spot on the statistics side. I still have concerns going forward that we will be able to remain in the same spot into the end of the season. It was definitely encouraging against Liverpool that we were pressing higher at the pitch, that, you know, that it did look like a much more positive performance. We have to wait for today, I think, to see if that's going to continue. I think it could. We've seen the odd good performance, and then it's just been followed by much of the same. So I would like to reserve my answer to that one till after today. What about you, Chris?
I think it's that inconsistency which we've seen all through Steve Bruce's tenure is still there, which, I mean, I guess those stats don't necessarily show. You get the breakdown of the wins, the draws and the defeats, but not how they kind of ebb and flow. And it was shock in a positive way earlier this season when we managed to get 2 wins on the bounce. But that seems to be a rarity under this management. I think I'm going to say about where we are, maybe slightly more positively, at least we do have a recognised striker in the squad. Obviously he has fitness issues historically, but we've been quite lucky so far that he's been fit. So at least we have a kind of focus point. But yes, I mean, it's always quite difficult looking at one season against the previous one, given that the fixtures are very different. I know that Adam made that point on a podcast recently, and I definitely back that. But yeah, it's pretty uninspiring stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. What about you, Alex? Do you put much stock in that sort of season by season comparison?
No, I think it's a great comparison, and it proves to me that, you know, the key thing I'd take from that is, where's this progress? You know,
Yeah.
we have made progress. We're making progress. Well, where is it? Because last season we had a dreadful start, and then it got a bit better. Well, you know, he was back in the transfer markets another 12 months down the line, or more than 12 months because of the pandemic. But, you know, as I've said before a few times, and again, I'd love to be proved wrong. Like, I think this is the absolute zenith of this Newcastle United. I think, what, we're in 15th today? 15th, 14th?
15th, I think after yesterday.
Yeah, we could go as high as 13th, and realistically, we're probably not going to go as low as 17th. I think that is Bruce's Newcastle United. We are where we are. There'll be more bad days than good days. We'll fluke some results that we don't deserve. We'll stay in some games, and then we'll nick some results, and we might even play well once or twice before the end of the season. But I think we're at the exact same place as we were last season. Chris hit the nail on the head. We're a side that people call inconsistent, but we are consistently average. That's us under Steve Bruce, and that's the best that we'll get under Steve Bruce. Love to be wrong, by the way. Would love to be wrong.
Yeah, that's the caveat of all of these things, isn't it? Like, we, you know, whenever anybody asks me, like, do you like Steve? Well, not as a person, I don't know. But do I like Steve Bruce as a manager? No, I don't think he should be our manager. And I don't think he's a good enough manager to manage any team in the Premier League. And I always caveat that with, I would love to be wrong. Prove me wrong. That would be great. If I was wrong, my team would be excelling and getting better and all of those things. So yes, that's the all important caveat, isn't it? Oh, my hair's falling out. I must be stressed about the game. Afternoon, guys. Hi, Gallagher Shots. Hiya. Will we see the same dedication against Liverpool, or will it be another close your eyes and hope for the best viewing? God, I hope it's the same sort of dedication. Chris Waff just made the point. I always go to his Twitter for the team sheet now because he's so quick putting it out. Don't know why. And it also like his little weather reports before he goes into the ground. It's cold, by the way. He said it would be interesting today to see if the front line will operate as a 3, almost as it did against Liverpool, with Joe Linton, Murphy and Wilson pushing higher up the pitch, because Almiron is sort of replacing Murphy, I think, in that kind of role today. It would be interesting. I guess if it does, then if it is, then I would hope to see a little bit more dedication and that kind of pushing higher. I would hope that the double long staff in the middle are able to push the ball higher as well. Hard to say though about the same dedication. I guess I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Do you think? Well, what do you think?
I mean, hope for it. Obviously, Fernandez has come out earlier this week and said that has been the kind of the line in the sand in terms of that's the performance, that's the standard. So, I mean, he's really he has committed himself and the rest of the side to repeating it. That said, I'm sure that Steve Bruce has his excuses ready-made in his back pocket, as it were, for it. So, I mean, I hope so, and I think that they're definitely capable of it. I think what I would hope for is a bit more activity going forward. We did have chances against Liverpool, more than I think we all thought. But, with Wilson in the side and with Almiron in the starting lineup, there should be enough to get at least as many, if not more, chances going forward. So, yeah, continue the defensive solidity, hopefully, and then build on that going forward. But for all this talk of progress from Steve Bruce over the last 18 months, sorry to be negative, but we haven't necessarily seen a huge amount. So, yeah, we'll wait and see.
What do you think, Alex?
I think it's going to be interesting because Leicester like to play counter-attacking football. That's why they're so good away from home and have a really average home record this season, but a frankly ridiculous away record, which doesn't bode well for little old Newcastle United today playing at home. So whether you'll see Leicester, monopolise possession 70% plus, I'm not so sure. And therefore, how did Newcastle react to that? Because for all as Chris rightly says, close your eyes and hope for the best, like we saw against Spurs, Chelsea, Man City, Man United at home. Our actual issue as a side, although that's dreadful to watch and witness, our issue as a side is the games against Fulham, the games against West Brom, the games against Brighton, the games against there's one other team I'm missing out there, Leeds possibly I didn't say. They're the issues when we actually have to force the game. Now, what will be interesting to see is how we react to Leicester, maybe giving us a bit more of the ball. Maybe Leicester letting our fullbacks, our centre-backs up the pitch, and us trying to kind of work out how much space we can safely leave behind with how good Leicester are exploiting that space, and at the same time continuing to show the good intent and effort and dedication and pressing that we saw against Liverpool. Is Bruce up to that kind of change, or does he just think to himself, well, where are these lads in the league? Right, they're up there. More of the same. I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know how much thought goes into it. I thought, personally, the change from Manchester City to Liverpool probably came from the players. Not in terms of Bruce sent them out and was like, what the hell is this? But in terms of the players, I don't want to go out there once again and roll over and die for an opposition. Let's at least put some tackles in. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, funny, that's kind of what my dad was saying when we were watching it. And I'm loath to just, if we're playing okay, I don't want to then be like, if we're playing shit, I don't want to be like, Steve Bruce, it's your fault. And then when we're playing okay, to be like, it's nothing to do with Steve Bruce, it's just the players. Because, that isn't fair at all. But sorry, Paul's just clarified that I don't have to kill anyone, which is good news for me. Yeah, but when we were watching the Liverpool game with my dad, sorry to bring back to that point, he was like, this is the players, not wanting to, like you say, roll over, Alex. This hasn't come from Steve Bruce. I don't know if that's just a complete bias against Steve Bruce because he doesn't like him and he doesn't want him to be our manager. I would be interested to see what happens today. I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm still very hopeful. As a person naturally, so I part of me really wants to believe and kind of does a little bit believe that Liverpool was a bit of a turning point, and in 3 hours or whatever, 2 hours and a bit, I might be proved totally wrong and it was an anomaly, but I'm still hoping that it was a bit of a turning point for us. Quick one, you mentioned earlier that they are weak in the air, and Robert says that if they're weak in the air, we should play Carroll. Alex, what do you think? Do you think so? Yeah,
I think I said it on a previous podcast. I wish Bruce would just play 4-4-2 and go Andy Carroll, and some weeks would get battered and some weeks would win. It's better than this turgid, horrific approach, this kind of gaslighting, weird alternate reality where you watch the game and then Steve Bruce comes out and there's people who are friends of his come out and say it was great and it's good and it's progress when you know it's not. I'd rather he would just Steve Bruce and Luke Edwards said it on a podcast to us. Sometimes he manages in the way he thinks people want him to manage, which is really worrying. But we'll park that for now. If he wants to, Bruce says, "I want to play 2 up front." We'll play 2 up front. Just do it. Stop talking about it. Do it. You went in this season after pre-season with Andy Carroll and Callum Wilson up front. It went really well against West Ham. It went really badly against Brighton, and we've never seen it since. So yeah, I would love to, especially like the guy in the comment said, if Leicester are weak in the air, then if you can't play Andy Carroll against a side that are weak in the air, when are you going to play?
Yeah, what do you think, Chris? Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen him as much recently. I think this is a game where could get some profit from him coming on. I think if Bruce does bring him on, though, it probably needs to be earlier than, 75 minutes, 70 minutes, which is all Steve Bruce seems to do. And to be fair, we haven't mentioned the R word on this video yet, but Rafa used to do the same late substitutions. If we are going to see Andy Carroll give him longer than 15 minutes to cause damage, whether or not he scores, I don't know. But I would be interested to see him get a run out later in the game, possibly.
I think I think he still offers that like giant physical presence as well, doesn't he? So you're right. It's no use if he's only got like 5 minutes on the pitch or 10 minutes on the pitch. He needs longer than that. But I haven't seen him play much longer than that in ages. So can he? I don't know. Was he affected by the coronavirus? I don't know. Like, we've got those things to consider as well. What have we got? Another one from Mark. Our friend Luke Edwards alludes, thank you, to Bruce getting what no other manager got in terms of transfers in the summer. So what do you expect us to get in January? It's a hard one, Chris. I think you're more transfer focused, aren't you? You have an interest in that, and you've been writing a little bit about that for the website. Additionally, you have a better eye on who's out there and who could strengthen our team. I'm not to put you on the spot. And Gallagher Shots has written, I think it's Chris who's watching. I don't know if I should say just Gallagher Shots or if it's somebody else, but he said, what about Chowdhury to NUFC? Thoughts? So what do you think we'll get?
There's definitely positions which need strengthening. Steve Bruce has already come out and said it's going to be loans, shock horror, as it's usually. I think that I wrote in the piece for the site that the last time we had significant investment in January, aside from Almiron, was 2015-16, when we brought in Townsend, Shelby, and Saive for 35 million. It's not often that we invest cash in January, and it's going to be the same this time, especially because of COVID. In terms of positions where we're probably going to need to strengthen, I think the priority for me, some have said it would be a striker. I think there's definitely a reason for that, but for me, it's going to be central midfield, because we need more creativity, and especially with players like Shelby losing their powers. To be kind, I think there's definitely some use in getting someone else in. As to kind of specific players, Tom Davies from Everton apparently is available. I think he'd be quite good. Maybe less excitingly, James McCarthy from Palace or Jack Cork from Burnley. But I think we will be getting in someone in central midfield. Hopefully, I just hope it's not Bentaleb, because we don't need to see him again. And then just talking about strikers, I think the pick of the strikers out there, off the top of my head, that we would probably be able to go for and would probably come. Divock Origi, I think would be a pretty decent signing as a backup. I think Callum Wilson definitely has that kind of starting berth, so you're not going to get someone in that's going to be that kind of marquee striker. But I think Origi needs game time, and I think could probably do a job for us there. And then the other position, and I've said in the piece, the easiest one probably to fill is at left back. So the only left back that we've got, I'm discounting Paul Dummett because of his fitness issues. We've got Jamal Lewis, who is a good player, but he's a young player, and we've seen that he's vulnerable to mistakes. So I think for me, it's a no-brainer to bring back in Jetro Willems, and he's definitely keen. He's been on Instagram daily, making kind of teasing comments about how he wants to be coming back. So I think for me, that's a no-brainer. And I think those are positions that we probably should strengthen, and just a couple of names there. But yeah, we definitely need players. And then just as to Chowdhury, that Chris from Gallagher Shots mentions, I think he'd be a great player to bring in. again, needs game time, knows the league. I would totally back that.
Chris says Chris is definitely prepared for that question. He has a list with him. Have you?
Well, I wrote an article. Yeah.
He did. That's true. He wrote an article for the site, so it's already up there. Greg Bullen says, if Bruce stopped chatting shit in interviews, maybe we could believe he knows what he's doing. Maybe. I mean, that's a good theory. Maybe it would be more. If anybody is watching this Sky, it's on Sky today, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If anybody is watching the Sky stuff and there's anything that comes up, I guess he'll be doing, or maybe has already done some pre-match stuff. Do let us know. We're obviously not watching it, or maybe Alex is watching it, as we know he's not. Undivided attention. I love that for us. So let's have a look. Yeah, Alex Pearson says, I wonder if the Sky pundits have started talking about Man United yet. Probably. There's probably nothing to actually contribute to our conversation in terms of what they're talking about. Alex, you mentioned West Brom before. How glorious is it seeing Allardyce being exposed as the fraud he is? Wonderful, Schadenfreude. Alex, you've got a big grin on your face as soon as
I just love the fact that I mentioned West Brom. So this is my acknowledged.
I have to link these things somehow. It's my job. So
well, I did put in the WhatsApp group last night that it was brilliant to see how badly he was doing. And listen, I think Slaven Bilic would be a good manager at St James's Park. I think he's had a good managerial career so far. Terribly treated by West Brom. They were the better team at St James's Park. They have a terrible, terrible squad. And he had them, in touch and distance of safety. Got a draw at Manchester City in his last game, and they binned him for, Sam Allardyce is clearly a very stupid man. He's a stupid, thick bloke who has made a career out of scraping the barrel for safety. He had two big jobs in his whole career, one at Newcastle, which he failed terribly at, and one in England, which he was sacked for the grossest of gross misconduct, just short of criminal proceedings. And yet he finds himself in Premier League jobs, and it's brilliant to see. Let's be clear, that was a squad under Bilic, which were playing for the manager. They had a really bad result against Palace, but Palace can do that. The team's away from home, and West Brom were down to 10 men. If you look at the rest of West Brom's results, I don't think there was any games you thought, they've underperformed there. They've brought in Sam Allardyce on what I assume is an absolute fortune, and he has comfortably made the team worse in the very short space of time. Not only that, he disingenuously suggested that the league should be stopped because he was 66 years old and he didn't want to catch coronavirus. Well, don't take the job, Sam. You were getting paid work before, so you had a job in the media. You got lots of money. You brag about how much money you've got and how much you took off Newcastle United when you were sacked. So just don't take the job. And everyone knows Allardyce wants 2 or 3 weeks on the training ground to drill the players, and they forget how to play football and they can defend. It's just so disingenuous. It was really good to see some people, I think it was the Price of Football pod, called that out, which is a good podcast, who basically said everyone can see what he's doing. His team are shit, so he wants the league suspended. The bloke's got no morals. A2. It's beautiful. Long may it continue. I would love it if we went down there. I know it won't happen, but just say fans could go back into the ground for West Brom away this season, and we managed to get in to send. I mean, I like West Brom as well, by the way. A great club, great town, really proper working class club, great atmosphere in the ground. I really like West Brom, so it's nothing against them. Not that any West Brom fans will be watching. That would be weird. But I really do. Allardyce takes them down with no wins.
Imagine if most of our watchers were just really big West Brom fans who just like this show. That would be weird. It is interesting. It's a shame for West Brom because you have to sort of reconcile that for the club and their their roots in that area. West Brom was the last ground I went to before lockdown, and yours too, Alex. We were at that cup match, which was just brilliant. And it's properly an industrial sort of place. I ended up walking along the train tracks to get to the hotel, which I soon learned was a stupid way of going, but it was dark and cold, and
Yeah,
I was like,
no one else did that. Just
not
you.
a single other person did that. And then when I left the hotel to go back to the train station, it took me like 10 minutes, and it had taken me about 35 the way that I decided to go. Anyway, that's not the point. But yes, in terms of exposing Sam Allardyce, that is sweet. Like his thing is that he's never been relegated, isn't it? That's his sort of like, that's the tagline, and perhaps that will soon be wrong, maybe. Chris, is it sweet for you to see him?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it couldn't happen to a more deserving bloke. So yeah, I think with Alex on that one, can't wait to see how that all falls apart. Sorry for the West Brom fans though, that I'm sure, as you say, are all watching.
Yeah, I mean, a similar boat, isn't it? It's a manager who is not ept. He's inept. Similar boat. Like it's rubbish to be a fan of a club like that when you know that there's potential and you want to be doing better, to for it not to be realised, and for it to be it's just really difficult, isn't it? I'm going to return us to. I was just sad there thinking about being back in the stadium. When I was driving back from South Shields this morning, you for most of the drive you're just pointing at St James's Park, and all the lights were on, and I was sad not to be going, or even in the pub somewhere watching it, but we'll get there. We will get there. In the programme, today's programme, as in the match day programme, Bruce says, as we head into the new year, our first goal will be to ensure that the remit of remaining in the Premier League is achieved, and then hopefully look to set new targets after that. So kind of admitting there was a little bit of furore, hysteria, if you will, about the comment that Bruce made, I think it was after Man City, that his remit is to keep this club in the Premier League. And that was kind of at odds with the previous comments, which were about, wanting to finish top 10, pushing further up, progress, etc. He also says, in terms of whether we're making progress, I'll let other people judge that. You are where you finish, and we've made a half-decent start. There's a long way to go, but let's hope that 2021 brings with it a good second part of the season. Alex, you were...
We're 15th now. We're 15th. Like, it's like... You know what? Often when Bruce says things, the overall point he's trying to make isn't a million miles away from the truth, but he confuses himself so much with, like, he's so bad at kind of self-criticism or admission of any kind of, not even failure, but lack of complete success, that, like, if he talks about what he said there without saying we've had a half-decent start, it makes a lot more sense. But it's that kind of like, we've had a half-decent, we're 15th. Do you know what I mean? Look at the sides below us in the league. And with the resources Steve Bruce has as a manager and the assets at his disposal, we should be nowhere near those clubs, nowhere near them.
Well, if the goal is 10th and we're 15th, if 10th is decent, then 15th is half.
Like, I mean, for hilarious. Remember when he wrote the Liverpool comments, like on the 3rd of December or something stupid? He was like, "I'm writing this before our trip to Brentford." It's like, why? Like, printing deadlines. There's no one to buy the program, Steve. Like, why is there a printing deadline? We get issues of True Faith literally 2 days after it goes to the printers. So who's doing the printing anyway? I'm getting off topic, but it's like, yeah, we've had a half decent start. If you think 15th is half decent and getting knocked out by Brentford and playing shit a lot of the time, like it's got to be better than this. If he replicates this form for the second half of the season, there will be a clamouring even more so than now for his head, and it is quite sad, really. But can you imagine if we'd been put into tier 2 before that weekend in December and would have played Fulham at home? And there'd have been fans there, 2,000 fans there. It would have been awful for Steve, you know what I mean? And I'd have loved to have gone back to the match. I'd have been desperate to be lucky enough to get one of the tickets. But with that performance, it would have been awful for him. And I need him, you hope he can understand that unless he dramatically improves the performances of his side, the first time that fans go back into the ground, they're going to be calling for his head. So it's fine sitting there writing in your matchday programme, we've had a half decent start. We haven't. We're 15th in the league, Steve. It's not good enough.
Yeah, the matchday programme offers itself like no... it offers him this space of like no accountability really, because it's the matchday programme that only goes out to journalists, and most of them don't write about it. It's Chris Roth that's tweeted that again. Just he's my homepage now. He's not. Chris Shipman, who's here. What is your take on that? What do you think? Obviously, Alex has probably said how you feel, but I mean, I kind of agree that half decent start like comment that's infuriating. How do you feel about the way Steve Bruce expresses himself and those comments in particular?
Yeah, he expresses himself incredibly imprecisely, I think, without thinking through the ramifications of. I think it's stream of consciousness stuff, and I don't think there's anyone there checking it, or briefing him, or if they are briefing him, he's not listening, which is a worry. But I think the Steve Bruce's and the other Steves are incredibly lucky about two things. First of all, as Alex rightly says, that there's no fans inside the grounds, and I think also if we rewind to last season, the kind of the poor performances towards the end of the season perhaps would have gotten not the same response, but pretty negative feedback as well from the fans if they were inside the ground. But I think the other key thing that Steve Bruce is really lucky about, and to say that we have had a good start is really galling about this season and last season. There have been some awful sides in this division. So obviously this season you have Sheffield United, who had a very good season last time round, but this season haven't done so well. But then last season, the sides that got relegated, Bournemouth, Watford and Norwich, all really poor. Steve Bruce is incredibly lucky that there were three very bad sides, and this season probably again will be saved by the likes of West Brom that we've discussed, and then also Fulham as well. Probably one or two others that are going to be worse. It doesn't look like Brighton are going to get out of being there or thereabouts anytime soon. So yeah, he's lucky on a couple of levels, but to say that we've had a good start is galling and frankly offensive.
Yeah, it's that disconnect and almost disrespect, I think, that bothers me so much, of the disrespecting the fans and this kind of like calling us hysterical or gaslighting us with this is a half decent start. It's like that's not true, and it's horrible to start to question that, or some people take on board his comments and say yeah, he's right, like fans want too much and all of that stuff. It's so frustrating to have to defend yourself all of the time. Michael Carling is watching. He says, how much credit for Bruce will if we win well? This is Michael, your question's worded horribly. How much credit for Bruce if we win well with a good performance today? How much more is needed to make up for the disastrous end of 2020? How much credit for Bruce? Some. He's the head coach. I don't know. Some credit for Bruce. Alex, what do you think?
Good performance would be nice. I think, West Ham was a good performance. Everton were played okay. Burnley was all right. But beyond that, from the 15 games we've played, even if we've picked up points, the performances have been poor. I think it's as much about performances for Bruce now as it is points, because it doesn't look likely we'll be relegated. I mean, a lot of that depends on the Sheffield. If we lose to Sheffield United, it doesn't matter what happened today. The shit hits the fan once again for Bruce. But one thing you'd say about Newcastle and the Bruce is the performances aren't sustainable in terms of picking up points in the Premier League. So I think a good performance would because there's been so few of them under him. If it was a good performance today, I think that would do a lot for him. I think in terms of how bad 2020 has been for Newcastle under him, I think a lot of people are entrenched in their views, and that's fair enough. It shouldn't be the job of Newcastle United fans to kind of make excuses for the manager. He does enough for that himself. So I think it'll take more than one good performance against Leicester to change fan minds. Like I said earlier, the issues for Bruce, and it was the same for Rafa, remember, although Rafa did very well against the top six in his time here, what you knew with Rafa Benitez, whenever you played anyone in the bottom five of the Premier League, is you'd beat them. And that's how you build as a side, that kind of consistency and that like base level. We don't have that under Bruce. We struggle against Fulham, we struggle against West Brom, we struggle against Brighton. We've got Sheffield United next week. They're the bottom four in the Premier League. So to me, well, not next week, sorry, it's Arsenal next week and then the week after. But I think Bruce is done in the eyes of many Newcastle fans. But the beautiful thing for Steve Bruce is he is the manager. He can change that. Everyone wants Newcastle to do well, despite what he says. And I think Newcastle are one of the most forgiving, patient fan bases out there, despite what he says. So, it's up to him.
Yeah, I think you're right. We did talk about it a little bit on the last one of these that we did, in that sort of admission that something's not quite right. You're right. It does. He has the ability to change it. That's the nice thing for him. But to do that, you have to admit something is wrong. And so far, he cannot do that. He can't do that. I don't know. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of, or pretty much everything that Alex says. I think the other thing that he can do, as well as trying to get a better performance out of the side. I don't know how capable he is of doing that in a kind of consistent way, but just stop blaming the fans. This kind of the first shots of this war on the fan base is not a wise move. And it's an incredibly stupid thing to do. Just to hark back to the last answer, he's lucky that there's not fans in the grounds. He can. If we perform well today, let alone get a result, he deserves a degree of credit. But I think also the players deserve credit as well. So it wouldn't be solely down to him in any case. We'll see what happens this afternoon.
Yes, we will. There's another question here. Tim Berzaval. I will never say it right, I'm sure. Tim likes to ask questions that send us a little bit wild. Is wild what I mean? Insane is what I mean. But this one's a bit more normal. Thanks, Tim. Relieved to see Lee Charney alive and well in the stands for the Liverpool game. That's because we'd made several allusions to the fact that he might not be. I know it's asking a lot, but if he could do one thing in 2021, what would it be? What should it be? Alex, what should Lee Charney's New Year's resolution be?
I think it might be a boring answer, but he should become open, transparent, and accountable to supporters. He doesn't speak to supporters. He told me himself a little while ago that would be seen a lot more of him in the media. Didn't happen. The club talked about a transformative communication strategy with Lee Charney at the centre of it. Didn't happen. So I think fans deserve answers, and I think other clubs show the way. And I'm not talking about open questions as much as I'd like to see open Q&As. I think for him to come out and say, it's been a tough year because of the virus and the pandemic. Here's how we've reacted. Here's why we've done what we've done. Here's why we think we're in good shape moving forward. And here's what we want to do in the next couple of years. And you don't have to be incredibly specific about that, but Newcastle United is supposed to exist for its fan base. Lee Charney and his lack of communication suggests that it exists only for the benefit of its owner. And remember, Newcastle United are supposed to want to try and sell you stuff like merchandise, like tickets. Well, a lot of fans who are already skeptical about the direction of the club, a lot of people already giving up tickets, long-term fans who've seen much worse football than we've seen. And one of the reasons for that is that the people who run Newcastle United treat it like a private members club for their own benefit and interest, and it shouldn't be like that. So I think if he was to come out and speak to fans, that would make a huge difference for me anyway. Because listen, there's only so much I imagine Lee Charney can do at Newcastle United. The power lies away. The power lies with the owner. By power, I mean the way the club runs itself and its financial direction. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but I'll never know if I'm wrong because he won't come out and speak to fans. So,
yeah, I suspected that might be your answer. And we've had one suggestion on the comments, but I'm not going to put it on the screen because it's very rude. But I'm sure if you're watching, you can see it. Yeah, that increased fan communication. I mean, Alex is on the board of the trust, as am I, and that is something we will continue to and do continue to work on. It is the biggest reason the trust exists. One of the biggest reasons to improve communication between the club and the fans. We are the reason the club exists. And you're right, Alex. It's not a private members club. It exists, for the fan base, and they need to respect that. Jonesy says Sheffield United were awful yesterday. Chris, what chance they'll resemble Brazil 70 on Tuesday evening?
I think there's definitely a chance, but yeah, I mean, I'm worried about that game. It's been a huge game for quite a while, but I think given the last 2-3 weeks, the Liverpool game midweek notwithstanding, I think that's become even bigger. So it's crucial that we don't just have a good performance against Sheffield United, but that we get a good and positive and clear-cut result. I don't want a 1-0 in off Joelinton's arse. I think it needs to be a kind of a good 2-3-0 win, a bit of daylight. It's a really important game, but I do worry that they might, if not click, I think thanks to our lack of consistency, I think they might be let into the game a bit more than against other sides, to put it mildly.
I think it's hard it's often harder unless there is just this complete negative trajectory for a team, that a team like that who have had a couple of bad results or, and a couple of really bad performances really are out to prove something. And I think that bar our Liverpool performance, you would look at Newcastle United and think we can get a result from that. What do you think, Alex?
I think Sheffield United's issues, they just can't score. The defensively, they're all right. They haven't been humiliated, particularly this season. They've lost a lot of games by 1 goal. But normally you just need 1 goal to beat them, as the comment on screen says. I mean, it's a massive game for Bruce. That, I mean, if you were to lose that game, it would be very difficult to come back from. And I think the players play a role in this as well. I think there's times this season I've thought he's lost the players. At Brentford, one of those games. And if you look at what Bruce has done since Brentford, he's brought back Matty Longstaff. He's got rid of Shelvey. DeAndre Yedlin's come back as a permanent fixture. Fabian Schär's come back in, whereas he was hardly getting a sniff in all season under Bruce. Jacob Murphy's become a permanent feature. It seems like Bruce has kind of jettisoned some of those players that he maybe was starting to lose and brought in some other ones. Well, he's going to run out of players eventually to kick out the side, and then this is probably when Big Andy comes back. We'll get beat at Sheffield United, and Big Andy will be back. So I think it's a massive game for Steve Bruce, that, because if he was to lose that game, regardless of what happens against Leicester in about 15 minutes' time, he's got to win that game. What I don't want to be doing is sat doing a podcast or listening to anything after that, and Steve Bruce saying, well, we'll put ourselves in a good position up until now. It wasn't our night tonight. It's like, no, you're playing a team who literally cannot win a game of football. And if you look at their form at the end of last season as well, actually, they've been an absolute car crash now for 25 games or something like that. It's his job to make sure that we go and like Chris says, win that game and win it well. Yeah.
This is a common question. Davey says, Sheffield will be 0-0. Okay. We get this, so some variation on this question quite often. And it's certainly something that seems to be on the minds of the people that engage with our content and on Twitter as well. And I know Lee, who may not be watching anymore, but he made it very clear how he felt about this. But it's this one from Stuart. Genuine question: would you take a series of heavy defeats in the short term if it meant? Sorry, I've just kicked my desk. That was that noise. If it meant Bruce having to go, there are, seemingly a faction of people who say yes, and there are a faction of people. Oh, hi Lee, he's still here. There are seemingly a group of people, including Lee, who say no. I'm still a fan of this team, and I don't want to see us, suffering heavy defeats. I can see both sides really. My concern is that if he had to go, who would come, which Davey commented as well. Chris, what do you think? Would you take a series of heavy defeats if it meant, say, like in this question, in this world, it would mean Steve Bruce is gone? What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's quite an assumption, because I mean, my working hypothesis on this one is that I don't think that he will be sacked. So I mean, I think it would just be, you know, cutting our nose off to spite our face potentially. But yeah, I mean, there have been moments this season when I have kind of entertained that idea, which is incredibly depressing, because I can't think of a time in my time supporting this club when I've actually even entertained that in a kind of serious way. I think to answer the question about who would come in, I think there are managers that could come in and do a job better than Steve Bruce, even if they're not necessarily the manager that we would want. Dare I say it, Slaven Bilic is probably a better manager than Steve Bruce and could probably do the job better. Is he the manager that I would actually want for this club? No. But yeah, there are other ones out there. Eddie Howe, I know, was relegated, but would play football, would communicate with fans more meaningfully and consistently and intelligently than Steve Bruce. Probably do a better job. I don't think I'm quite there yet. Every time, and just to kind of round this answer out, I think every time that I do start thinking that way, we tend to pull a performance out, and I think that's just totally reflective of the inconsistency of this side. We go and have runs of really poor performances, and then we'll pull something out to just give a little bit of hope and just kind of kickstart just a little bit longer. Yeah, I don't think I'm quite there, but I can understand the sentiment of people moving that way, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen King, presumably not the horror author, wrote, "How bad is the inertia of the club that we were even contemplating wishing bad on the team?" That is, sad. It's 2:15 kickoff. Davey will finish shortly. Alex, what do you think? We'll finish it here. After your answer, and then I'll get your predictions, and then we can go and make drinks and go and watch the game. What do you think? Would you take it? I mean, B. Gardner wrote that the worry is the goal difference, and if the losses would be too much to overcome. How do you feel about
that? Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I think like the Man City game is a case in point where I said I'm not even going to watch it. I'm not going to watch it. I wasn't podcasting for it. I'm not going to watch it. I was so pissed off after Brentford. It'll be a waste of time. And then watching it, and then every goal, every chance is like, it still kills you watching Newcastle play badly and getting beat, and then listening to Bruce afterwards. And the only thing I can compare it to is when Souness was in charge, and Souness's last game, Man City away, which were lost 3-0, and he was sacked at least half the way, and were kind of advocating we're losing that game. There was not many. There were people celebrating Man City goals because they just wanted them out so badly. We're not a million miles away from that happening. Where it's an extreme idea, and I don't think anyone wants Newcastle United to lose. And I think the point made above, I think by Barry, saying you lose these games in the Premier League, you lose games heavily. It happened in the pod, things can fall apart very quickly, and with no guarantee that you'd be replaced by anyone better. As horrific as it is, it's just kind of hope he keeps winning the Premier League for as long as possible and someone buys the club, which is pretty grim, but it's the way it is, unfortunately.
Yes, it is. Well, Stephen says he could write a book about the Ashley years. That would be pretty scary. We've had a suggestion that we do a post-match show instead of a pre-match show. We'll do post-match podcasts. That's what our podcasts are. We could think about that. Podcasts are a bit more serious, a bit more analysis. This is, but that's a good idea. We could certainly think about it. But we are 5 minutes from kickoff. So, Chris, what do you think the scoreline is going to be in 2 hours' time?
I'm going to hope for a continued good performance, but I think that Leicester have a lot going forward, slightly different proposition to Liverpool. I don't want to predict a defeat, but I am going to predict a defeat. I think we'll lose 2-1.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, 3-1 Leicester. I think the performance will still be there. I think Road will look a lot against Liverpool. There's only so many times your goalkeeper can stop you losing 3-0. As the performance was better against Liverpool, but Liverpool still should have won the game comfortably. So I'll go 3-1 to Leicester. But it won't be the end of the world. Like I said, the big games are the Arsenal game and the Cup and the Sheffield United games are. It's horrible going into a game like this thinking I will take a defeat with an improved performance, but at this stage I would.
Well, yeah, that's how I went into Liverpool. Like, I did not expect us to get a result at Liverpool, and I would have taken a defeat happily if we looked better and we got a point out of it. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 1-1 draw. I'm saying we're getting a point because I want to be positive, but I'll probably be wrong in 2 hours. We'll see. Thank you again so much for watching. I think our post-match podcast is coming out today. I think I'm doing that as well. Heavy on the football day. Thank you for watching. Yeah, I'll be back at some point. The fixtures are a bit weird, but we'll make it work. And thank you. I'm just constantly thanking you. Thanks again.
thumbs up, and on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you like the Charlotte Show.
Thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel. I always forget to do that. Thanks.